Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm looking a little bit pallid today. That's not unusual. It's an overcast day here in New Bedford. I'm going to be talking with you about Vedic astrology in general with my ghostly cat here, Flash. And I've been a Vedic astrologer for a long time. You can look at my bio on earlier videos in the series, but I'm here to talk mainly about Vedic astrology, how it affects you, and also how it affects the world in general. Okay, so we'll go through some changes that have occurred over the past week. We'll also go through some changes that are are going to occur relatively soon, and also how these will affect you by individual signs, and also on the world stage. The I've been doing this program for about 4 years. I am, this is the commercial plug part of the program. I am a Vedic astrologer. I've been a Vedic astrologer for over 30 years. I do readings, I do instruction, I do have a school. I am working on a book. I am working on getting some additional guests in over the next few months to talk with you. I am working on my diction. Last week, I have to apologize to you. I was really over medicated to combat a cold. So it looks like my cat's giving me a beard. So I was a little bit sleepy and I seemed a little bit more slurry than I normally am. I am working on that. And so you should see an improvement in sound quality, I hope, over the next few months. So and we will definitely be moving into a new locale to actually do these videos shortly. It's taking longer than I thought, but we are busy, and so that's good. That's productive, and it's it's a work in progress. And I am seeing myself doing a much um, let's see now, trying to think of the right word. Um, high res, high dynamic, high tech presentation in the immediate future. In the meanwhile, I hope you can enjoy these. You will enjoy these low tech videos, and if you want to ask me any questions about the charts over the week, I am having some guests on over the next couple of months. Some really interesting people, and so stay tuned. So if you want to contact me, the best place to contact me, that the closed captioning is not on. I apologize. Uh, so if you want to contact me over the next few months, um, the best way to contact me is really by cell phone, 508-525-0001. And you can text me at that number too. And also I have pages on Facebook, WhatsApp. Um, I'm on, I'm sorry, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter. I haven't left in the Elon Musk cow migration. And let's see now, where else can you get me? Oh, at neibas@comcast.net. So enough of the personal stuff. By the way, I I am trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers really, really quickly, and I can see myself doing that within the next few months. But I need your help to do that. So if you could like, subscribe, and share the page with your friends, and or with anybody who's just interested in astrology in general, excuse me, please do so. That would be greatly appreciated, and you will receive great spiritual benefit from doing so. So let's uh, so we're going to go to the chart page right now. And there have been some interesting developments since last we spoke. By the way, this is November 27th, 2022. I hope everyone who celebrates had a great Thanksgiving. And I'm just trying to get to my pages so I can actually get the astrology up and rolling. Excuse me. Still a little bit of the cold left. Okay. Yep. Sure why this is not working the way I want it to. I apologize to you all. Let's see now, so I need to get to shrink it. That's what I need to do. There we go. So, as I said, November 27th. So it's a 9-day. And we're going to go to a now chart. And it's 11:57:27. So a lot of nines in this. So that means we've ended something, right? Okay. All right. So let me just show you the chart for today. I'm keeping the chart very simple. I'm not putting a lot of the bells and whistles on it. And I figure I can do that when I'm a little bit more ready to engage students in classes. A lot of times I prefer the simpler astrology structures because they're much easier to explain. And I'm going to stop the share right now and start it again, just because I found that works better with Zoom. Okay, so 3 times for good luck, 3 times for Jupiter. All right, so, okay, so Vedic astrology, just to go over this very quickly, Vedic astrology uses a sidereal or a star-based zodiac or a constellational zodiac. And the constellations are really not, they're more like fixed stars. They're called nakshatras, meaning that which does not decay. That's what the term technically means. And this essentially means in order to position the planets and the signs in the sky so they align with the nakshatras, you have to make adjustments. So this sets almost everything back about 24 degrees, roughly 24 degrees. So essentially, Jupiter is not at around 29 degrees of Pisces, about to enter Aries. It's actually at 4 degrees, 38 minutes of Pisces. And so those are the kinds of things that will differ in Indian astrology. If your sun sign in Vedic astrology, in Indian, in regular astrology, or in Western astrology is Cancer, let's say, it doesn't last from June 22nd to July 21st. It starts on July 15th and it runs through August 15th. So you have to make that mental kind of adjustment when I'm giving these projections. But over here, we have one really significant change over the past week, and that was Jupiter going direct, which is really like a big thrill for a lot of people. Jupiter's direct in the sign. It's right next to Neptune, by the way. I'm not showing the outer planets, but it's right next to Neptune. So that has caused a lot. If I use Western astrology, it's usually very selectively, but that has caused a lot of confusion in terms of finances and opportunities and legal matters. Okay, so that does work in this particular case, but we can also see that because K2 is in Libra over here, and Libra has rulings over court matters, to a certain extent, uh, balance and success in society. So the society will still feel a little bit misdirected and conflicted for at least another year or so. Jupiter, on the other hand, has just turned direct. That will make certain things, certain elements in your life more predictable, more standard. The communications, or the communication at least of cultural norms, will be more straightforward. Now, keep something in mind. Saturn is also aspecting Jupiter. Why is that important? Well, Saturn tends to destroy. This is an over exaggeration, so this is something which is, you have to take this into account when you're listening to interpretations from me or from any Vedic astrologer. Saturn tends to destroy whatever it looks at. So there's a legend that the reason that Ganesha has an elephant head in Indian mythology is because Saturn was coaxed into looking at Shiva and Parvati's son, and Parvati's son, and essentially said, "No, I can't do that. I'll destroy the baby's head." And they said, "Oh no, one glance can't look." And he looked at it, and the baby's head got blasted away. So it's a pretty morbid story, but Vishnu, thinking quickly, found the first head that he could find, and it was an elephant's head, and put it on Ganesha. So that's the story of how Ganesha developed an elephant's head in Indian thought. And Saturn aspects Jupiter. So this means judgment will be straightforward, but it will still seem like it's very oppressive. It'll still seem like it's very um, strict, regimented. So unfortunately, what this means for a larger society is that supplies of goods will still be limited. Optimism will still be limited, excuse me. Optimism will still be limited. Um, People's expectations will still be limited. Now, that doesn't mean that some people aren't going to, but I think one of the things that the Jupiter retrograde did was it Jupiter retrogrades tend to be very overly optimistic. They tend to be a little bit unrealistically optimistic, very idealistic. So what happens in things like this is going to have a direct effect on the student loan discussion that's going on right now. The Jupiter retrograde, it the student loan forgiveness got approved during a Jupiter retrograde period. I'm not sure it's going to, and it also got overturned during a Jupiter retrograde period. I'm not sure over the next few months whether or not we'll see that brought back again, but it did give us another 6 months of student loan deferment. But in this particular chart, so a lot of the plans you have, they'll seem to go forward a little more smoothly now. You won't have a lot of reversals and starting over. So bringing it down to a personal level, you won't have a lot of reversals and starting over, but you will have to work harder and more deliberately in order to make them happen. So it so you'll see myself making progress, but it'll be eked out slowly but surely. And then it'll become really frustrating around April. We'll talk about that later in the broadcast. Saturn aspecting Jupiter is actually good for self-discipline. People will start to focus their monetary goals. They'll start to focus their life goals a little bit more realistically. There'll be less over excitement about it, less fear, less anxiety. They'll know the limits within which they're working. And Saturn is still aspecting Ketu and will aspect Ketu until next January 23rd. And that will still mean confusion in trade, confusion in markets until that time, because Libra rules markets. And it will also indicate some confusion or some bad judgment in relationships. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind when you're considering getting into a marriage or getting into a long-term relationship. Typically, it isn't a time that I would pick for people to go into weddings or things like that. But if the plans had been made a long time ago, before K2 entered Libra, or before Saturn entered Capricorn again, if they were made around May of this past year, it's probably okay to proceed. But I still recommend waiting until around this coming fall to or at least the summertime, to go forward with wedding plans. The other thing is, if you have, or partnerships for that matter. So this doesn't mean that partnerships will be bad. It just means that partnerships will be fraught with legal difficulties or with delays and obstructions. So just be aware of that in general. Rahu in Aries. Rahu's still got quite a ways to go through Aries, still a lot of discontent with leaders. We're seeing this all over the place. It's not just left, right, it's from both sides of the spectrum. Rahu likes change. Rahu likes change for the sake of change, is constantly dissatisfied with what has been done. It sees possibilities that other grahas can't see, and it's the North Lunar Node, but it can't hold on to gains it's made. So there's this constant level of, well, you got this, but you can't hold on to it. So that's in some ways why we're seeing some setbacks in social breakthroughs we thought were made many, many years ago and aren't following through. So let's go through and let's talk in general. Saturn and the Moon are in conjunction. That means a lot of hard work this coming week. It's not necessarily a bad conjunction, but it means there'll be a lot of difficulty in getting tasks done. And Mars is in Taurus. This can mean momentary setbacks um, or hesitations in real estate. The real estate market is slowing a bit, just in general, and we'll talk about things like that more when we get to the locality map. But the real estate market is slowing a little bit. We're seeing that. But we do have a nice aspect of Jupiter on Mercury, Sun, and Venus, which will enhance communications, which will make people a little bit nicer with each other. I still be careful on the roads this year, just because of K2 being in Libra, but also Mars is aspecting Venus, Sun, and Mercury, and a lot of people with prominent planets in those signs, in Taurus and Scorpio, will tend to hold grudges for a few months. I would say at least for 2 months, until Mars goes direct, and maybe even into February or March, because they'll be remembering past grievances or past wrongs. So this is something to be aware of. So don't necessarily think that because Jupiter's aspecting the sign, it's going to be all peaches and cream. Mars is a very difficult planet. It's a very destructive planet. People can say things. Mars is in the symbolic house of speech, so people will say hurtful things. They'll bring up the past. They'll bring up things that should have been left unsaid. At the same time, it's good to say things that you've been meaning to say for a long time, if you can control it and use it as a method of self-exploration or personal development. So let's say you've been putting off working out, or putting off exercising, or putting off speaking up for yourself. at work, do it, but try to um, try to bring it down a notch. You can do it. There'll be a tendency to repeat it with Mars retrograde in Taurus, but try not to repeat it. Say what you have to say once, then move on to the next topic. And also use this as a tool to improve yourself. Okay. So anything that you've left neglected for the past few months, now is the time to get back into that pattern, whether it be exercise or work that you left unattended. Those kinds of things are very good for Mars retrograde. All right, so let's go to the individual charts. But again, we will see. Let's just go. Let me just stretch back again. I say this will essentially, I think, increase the war damage in the Ukraine, increase problems with fossil fuels. Um, I'm not crazy about increase panic. These are things I'm not really looking forward to, but I have to be honest with you. If I'm going to give you these broadcasts, I'm going to at least tell you the negatives as well as the positives. But the positives are that there's at least a negotiation channel open with this Jupiter aspect on Venus, Mercury, and Sun. It probably won't be fully open until around December when Mercury and Venus change signs and Venus moves out of combustion range of the Sun. But it will be present, so there's some, um, despite what you're hearing in the news, there is some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It may not be the outcome that Western Europe wants, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And it may not be what I'm thinking is going to happen. There may be some kind of a compromise reached between the two countries, and that would actually be a better outcome than an outright victory on either side. All right, so let's go on to how this affects you individually. From the chart, Rahu's still in Aries. It gives that general discontent with leadership, which we spoke about before. There's a general consideration that money is a big issue over the next few weeks, and especially spouses are bringing in more money, but they're not being as communicative about it. And in the third house is Mercury, has a strong desire to dig under the scenes or dig below the cushions for resources. Some potential for sudden gains of money from the government. We have seen a lot of tax rebates go out, and windfalls from the government for COVID relief funds across the country, at least in the United States. And this is a world map, so we're looking across the world, and that's possible as well. The Saturn and Moon in the 10th house, career life will be a very strong focus, more important than home life for this particular sign. And we have Jupiter in the 12th house. So again, spending to learn, spending to expand. For Taurus has Mars in the first house as an exchange of Mars with Venus in this chart. Now, Mars and Venus, if Mars is in Venus sign and Venus is in Mars sign, this is usually a sign for increased sexual activity or increased passion about projects. Mars is retrograde, so you'll pick up projects that you left behind and also try to mend them, try to recover them. But that'll take a couple of months to complete. Mercury's in the second house. This means money coming from relationship partners, and also from yourself. So this will be good for partnerships for this sign. But again, some potential for fighting with relationship partners that does show up for this sign. Moon is in the 9th house, so that indicates slow but steady luck. Career life looks good. Financial gain looks good for Taurus. Again, they should watch out for illnesses, though, especially of the loins and especially of the intestines. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury in the sixth house, Venus and Sun in the sixth house. So they should be, they'll be focused a lot on conquering their enemies, on conquering their fears and anxieties, but they will have enemies which will kind of mask them. They'll have a little bit less courage than normal, which is unusual for the sign. They'll have to work on talking a little bit more. Saturn is in the eighth house. It's good for exploration of old texts and old concepts. And ninth house Lord is in the eighth house, so this could indicate some gains from residuals or from unearned income, or from essentially from static income. That is income you're not working for. Career life looks very good for this particular sign this month. In terms of children will tend towards sickness or illness, so you have to watch out for them. And they'll also be a little bit moody. For Cancer, Cancer has a lot of relationship focus this month. Jupiter's in the ninth house, so the luck for this sign is very, very good. Relationship life will be stable, but rather predictable. Not a lot of changes, but also a little bit of boredom or sameness to it, which is not really that bad a thing in relationships. Venus, Sun, and Mercury, some potential for love affairs for the sign. So if you want to maintain a stable or boring relationship, watch out for this combination. K2's in the fourth house, so there'll be some disruption or some problems with home life. And Rahu's in the 10th, some career fame and some gains through property or through hard assets like oil or property or even attacks for Cancer. This is not a bad placement. This is actually a good placement for Cancer to have Mars in the 11th house. But again, it'll mean doing a lot of things you've done before. So not a lot of new projects. For Leo, Leo has Mars retrograde in the 10th house. The reason I'm focusing on that is because this is the house of career for Leo. And it'll have some difficulty satisfying bosses, but career life will start to regenerate and resume its growth. Jupiter in the 8th, there'll be gains from relationship partners. Moon in the 6th, you'll have to watch out for health issues, but it's good for preventing losses. Saturn's in the 6th too, so this is what's called a Viprit Raj Yoga. Viprit Raj Yogas are usually nice because they minimize enemies and losses. And they also produce some kinds of boons to the person. For K2 being in the 3rd house, a lot of courage for the sign. Venus, Sun, Mercury, a lot of force in terms of career, a lot of dynamism in terms of career and home life. For Virgo, Virgo has Mercury in the 3rd house. So it will speak kindly, it will speak nicely, it will also defend itself rather well. K2's in the 2nd house. It will, however, have trouble being understood, and income gains will be sporadic but big when they come. Now Mars is in the 9th house, so this sign will have the best luck by being independent, by doing things on its own, by essentially paying attention to its real estate or property. Jupiter's in the 7th house, good opportunity for leadership, for affiliations with organizations. And Saturn is in the 5th house, so some problems from past life efforts. So So essentially, if you had, let's say, work that you've been putting off doing, I would suggest catching up on it this week, because you won't have a lot of time after that. Venus, so you're already spoken about Venus, Sun. So overall, not a bad week for Virgo. For Libra, Libra has K2 in the first house, which sort of not really curses the house, but makes it a little bit difficult to focus and a little bit difficult to achieve goals. Rahu's in the seventh house is a little bit of confusion about long-term relationships and a little bit of anxiety about them. And relationship partners will seem to run hot and cold. Venus, Sun, and Mercury are in the second house. Good for speech, good for education, good for financial growth for this sign, though. And Saturn and Moon are in the fourth house, so good for working around the house, good for studying, especially old and revered documents. And also, it'll focus a lot on regular work. So K2 often associates itself with unpleasant tasks. So there'll be a lot of throwing out of the garbage, organizing things, that kind of stuff. Saturn will make it seem like a lot of work. Jupiter in the sixth. You won't have many enemies, but be careful of the ones who portray themselves as your friends, because they may try to kill you with kindness. So they may they may try to persuade you to give up your ambitions because there'll be too much work. So that's something that you'll probably regret in April. The other thing is Mars in the eighth. There can be some signs that this sign will be abused or taken advantage of by its relationship partner. But as long as you focus on self-study and self-discipline, you'll be fine. And let's see now. That's going on to Scorpio. Scorpio has, it's real, there's an exchange of lords, is what's called a parivartana yoga. That's the Sanskrit term for it. It's called a mutual exchange in Western astrology between Venus and Mars. Hi, how you doing? And the Lord of the 11th house is, and the 8th house is in the first house. So this means good financial gains from friends and from behind the scenes studies, and also from real estate and property, because that shows up in this chart as well. Third house Lord has, so if you don't have property, you'll probably get some financial gains from family members or children. Jupiter is in the fifth house in this chart, so that's good for financial gains as well. Getting benefits from past efforts. And Saturn and Moon are in the fourth house, so that indicates a lot of focus on work life this month, this week, and this month. For Sagittarius has Saturn and Moon in the second house, which indicates slow acquisition of money, but it will start to come. Home life will start to stabilize. You'll have a better focus or a better grip on what you want in terms of financial growth and in terms of economic stability. And Rahu in the fifth house, children will seem a little bit greedy or difficult to deal with. Mars in the sixth house, be careful driving, especially during this month. Be careful driving. Venus is one of the significators for vehicles. Venus is aspected by Mars. There's some potential for accidents in this chart. Also, I was speaking with friends in Turkey, and they experienced some earthquakes in this past week, and I know Texas experienced them. So this is when Mars moves into these fixed Earth signs, there's always some potential for earthquakes, continuing earthquakes. So be careful about any kind of shocks exposing yourself to explosions. We've seen an increase in gun violence in the United States in particular. I'm expecting it to see it in other parts of the world as well because of this, because of Sagittarius being such a world influencing sign. And finally, from the chart, overall, not a bad chart. Good for career, good for gains, um, but a little bit dangerous. So be careful, folks. For Capricorn, Capricorn has a Sashi Yoga. Saturn's placed in the first house with the moon. That's considered a kind of a Saturn great personality yoga. And essentially what you'll see is a lot of focus on work life. Although again, not a lot of rewards or recognition from work life. Jupiter's in the third house, so again, good diplomatic relations. Rahu's in the fourth. Some disturbances at home. Mars is in the fifth. Some arguments with kids or with love affairs or with entertainment. So he'll probably be attracted to more aggressive forms of entertainment. And Venus is in the 11th house with Sun and Mercury. So this should be good for financial gains for the sign. So this is overall not a bad. A lot of focus on relationship life, though, and some unhappiness with relationship life, unfortunately, for the sign. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Mars in the fourth, so that's another form of Mars affliction. And so this sign will face some arguments at home or some difficulties with home life. Jupiter's in the second house, so it's good financial gains, but the Lord of the first is in the 12th, so that will also give some kinds of I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, some kinds of expenditures for personal matters or for education. And Venus is in the 10th house, so career life actually should be good for the sign. K2's in the 9th, so there'll be unexpected breaks or interruptions in luck. So you'll have to be prepared for that. But overall, this is not a bad chart for Aquarius. Again, it shows a heavy expenditure pattern, but also a better earnings pattern than it has over the past few months. So that's not entirely bad. Finally, last but not least, Pisces has Jupiter in the first house. That's a Hamsa yoga, a swan, or as my friend Bill Levis he used to say, a duck yoga. And essentially, it's really considered to be a very auspicious yoga combination. It enhances the qualities of Jupiter, so it gives good luck, good blessings, a lot of ethical considerations. Because of the Saturn aspect on Jupiter, the ethical considerations are basically my way or the highway for a lot of people right now. And that's what Saturn's aspect on Jupiter really does. So that's why we have this war going on right now. There are more complicated astrological and sociological reasons for that, but that's the surface astrological reason. for for Mars in the third, it gives the sign a lot of courage. Rahu in the second wants more money, wants a lot more money. K2's in the 8th house. There'll be fights or disagreements with relationship partners. Venus, Sun, and Mercury are in the 9th house. Good for overall luck from this combination, although none of these planets are particularly great for this rising sign. It still gives an advantage of having houses in the 9th house, of having planets in the 9th house. So benefits from the government, from communications, and from the arts. Saturn and Moon is in the 11th house, so that gives slow but steady gains. So not necessarily a bad chart for Pisces rising, just some challenges. The chart overall, and again, I'm probably saying this because Jupiter's direct, Mercury's going to go direct in a few days, so we'll have to look out for that. But analogous group communications, Mercury retrograde is kind of I would say it's overplayed by a lot of astrologers. There will be some communications issues with it. There will be, and it depends on which combinations uh, it, it's with. Uh, but I think overall, when you see this kind of a combination, you'll see good luck for people in general, and sort of like a parting of the clouds, so maybe some guarded optimism. And again, keep in mind, it's your life. You can change it at any point. You don't have to just accept it as being, this is horrible. You can work with the tools you have, and you've got some pretty good tools in this chart. Jupiter is well placed. Venus, Sun, and Mercury are well placed. Even Rahu and Ketu are well placed if you want to introduce change in your life. So, and so is Mars if you want to correct some mistakes you've made physically over the past few months. So I think, so I'm guardedly optimistic about this chart. This is not a great time in world affairs. I'm aware of that, but this is not the worst of times either. Um, the um, the layout examples. Let's go to the time and space change chart, and we'll probably a little bit shorter than we normally are. I hope not too much shorter. Okay, oops. What's that? And we're gonna bring that back. All right, so uh it's really uh, I am in business. All right. No, that's not doing anything. All right. So let's go back to this, and I apologize. It does this every once in a while. Oh, great. Okay. So it finally did it properly this time. Okay, so where we're looking for a lot of activity is really in um over, I have to save the time, see how much time I have left, is over the Sun and Mars and Mercury and Venus line. So I'm expecting some violence or some civil unrest in the northwestern United States, even in Vancouver, even in Western um, Canada, uh, and probably spreading a little bit down into California. Um, Now we're not getting a lot of lines um, uh, in the western states, which I think is a good thing. But we are getting a lot of a Rahu line, a pretty prominent Rahu line down here, and with the moon over here in Texas. Now, for those of you who follow the news, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, has just um, invoked the invasion clause. That'll probably cause some problems, obviously, in Texas. So what that means in terms of like how they'll enforce policy or something like that. There's an invasion clause in the Texas Constitution, for those of you who don't know. And because of the number of immigrants or not immigrants, undocumented aliens coming over, uh, that's concerning to Texas. And I can understand it because it's overwhelming some of the towns especially on the border. But basically this moon Rahu line is like right here. Yeah, I think that's the El Paso area. So I think you're going to see some panic or alarm around this part of the world and going up all through the Midwest, all the way through North and South Dakota. Um, the other part you have right here is this moon line heading out towards Michigan and towards the central states. And this could cause some political recession or some recession, some slowdown in economic activity. Um, that may have to do with the truckers, uh, with the rail issue. I'm sorry, with the rail uh, issues. I'm not sure. And let's see, now we have a Saturn line and a Sun line. So this indicates government deadlock, which is not surprising given the fact that we have a split House and Senate. Um, in the eastern United States and in Puerto Rico and even in Cuba, you'll see some splits, and even in Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. I think you're starting to see some signs of civil unrest in those countries. I should check the news more. I apologize for not doing it. And even in Colombia, uh, and the eastern United States, you have this Saturn line going up all the way through uh, New England, New York, New England, the entire East Coast, Pennsylvania. Um, geez, really, all the way through Florida, through uh, Delaware, through God, New England, where I am. So that's not good for the economy. And this particular combination right here, um, I'm going to see if I can move this over a little bit, show it to you a little more clearly. And there's a Venus and Mercury line coming up over here, and this can indicate some problems with natural resources, and also some cautious optimism about the future. Uh, there's a Jupiter line running straight through Brazil. Oh, and by the way, Argentina is having some problems right now. I know they are. I have heard that. So this is consistent um, with a lot of these lines running through here. There's a Mars line. There's some violence in Argentina right now, and this holds true. And it'll probably spread a little bit to Brazil over the next week or so. Um, the other thing is you have a Rahu line going down through Western Africa near the Ivory Coast, and also a Sun line going right through Portugal, Morocco, and down through Central Africa, down all the way through South Africa. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean there'll be government repression in those parts of the world, but chances are you'll see some more governmental uh, takeovers of businesses, or maybe even more potential for martial law, especially in Libya. Okay, and also even potentially in France and even parts of Great Britain. So I don't think this is something that's will be quote unquote official martial law. I think it'll be more like a crackdown, more like a restriction. There'll be economic pain, certainly in this part of the world, and maybe even some violence over it in England, uh, and Ireland, and going down into Algeria, and uh, down through the Sudan and into uh, Angola and Mozambique. The other line that I'm a little bit worried about is this moon line, which can give changes to governments over here because of recessionary pressure. I'm not really worried about changes to governments. I think if governments need to be changed, they should be changed. But I don't like the instability or the feeling of uncertainty it gives people. Uh, Jupiter's passing through actually the area close to Turkey and also close to the Ukrainian conflict. So that does indicate some possibility of reaching a peaceful conclusion, but it's still a ways off, at least from what I can tell. There's a moon line running through Iran. Iran has been going through comparative hell lately. There's been a lot. Iran and Iraq both have, but Iran more so. There's been civil unrest. There's been, oh gosh, a lot of people in protests. So, so there's definitely the impression that people want to change in government in that part of the world, or a change in how government is run. There's a Rahu Saturn line passing close to India, China, Bangladesh border. So I think one of the things that this happens, this will probably result in some food shortages or some kind of um, restrictions in those parts of the world. And China, China has a Saturn line running through it. We all know that there have been increased COVID restrictions. That's been in the news. Saturn, Mars, there will be rebellions or fights about it. The government will come down too hard, far too hard. This entire section of lines over here indicates that. The same is true in Indonesia and Borneo, and also even in the Philippines. So, again, I'm not expecting a happy time in Southeast Asia or in Asia in general, but there is some hope for optimism um, as but I'm not crazy about that Mars line being so close to the Taipei, to Taiwan. Um, Finally, we have a Jupiter line running through Australia. Australia looks like it's going to start to get control of itself. And again, none of these are major crises, by the way, but I think if we look over here, um, there are a lot of crises connected with over these lines right here. You follow that from the United States, pretty much all the way through Western Europe and North Africa, all the way through Africa. And also, there are what I would call lines of want or stifled supply chains in over here in over India, over Eastern Europe, over China in several places, and even over Australia and even over New Zealand. So I think we're going to have to look out over the next few weeks for supply chains and maybe even some violence connected with supply chains, which is not news. We've already seen these in isolated parts of the world. We'll probably see more over the next few months, and that may actually lead to a resolution of the conflict in the Ukraine. So hopefully that'll be over sooner rather than later, but I'm still not really seeing a resolution to that until after January. So that's it for me for this week. I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Use this information to better yourselves. Don't use it to get depressed about the world. Remember, even at the worst times in the world, there are still good things happening. So again, these things don't necessarily have to affect you individually. Okay. Namaste. I love you all and have a blessed week. Thank you. Bye, everyone.